Just a quick note before we begin. If you could like and subscribe on your listening platform of choice, that would be super helpful. Thanks. Let's jump in.
My now wife, Jordan, we had just started dating. Somebody came up to me and was like, so Steve, how's making candles going? And Jordan's like, you make candles?
Right.
So here I am trying to impress this girl, and her dad's already like, you're dating a drummer? Like, what are you doing? And here I am, like, also making candles.
Yeah.
Like every dad's dream.
Alex, ever heard of Steve Soderholm?
Who?
Steve Soderholm?
Is that candle guy?
Yeah, scent master.
Is he based in Nashville?
Something like that.
What's the name of his company again?
Ranger Station.
What do they make?
Freaking insane candles that, come in a whiskey glass.
He sounds interesting.
He really is. He's literally mastered all 5 senses.
What do you mean, all 5 senses?
Taste, touch, sight, smell, and sound.
So he's like a genius?
Pretty much.
Gosh, I can't wait to sit down and eat lunch with this guy.
Hey, light a candle, get cozy. It's lunchtime.
Steve, thanks for taking your lunch break with us. We really appreciate your time.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. So, as we were digging into your life, your story, and all that, we know that you are a candle maker. You're a scent master, if you will. You're great at
adding
it.
that to my business card, scent master.
Exactly.
Add it to your business card, add it to your
But
resume.
we have one more, though.
We do. So not only are you able to make candles and cool smells and scents and stuff like that, but you've also somehow, through your life and your business story, harnessed the 5 senses. So you're also a sense master. And I think that's what's most interesting about you going through our research is that you've somehow harnessed all 5 senses: sight, smell, sound, touch. Which one? Taste.
Taste.
All 5 of them you've harnessed into some cohesive life and business story. And so I think it'd be really cool. And Jade, if you could kind of break down how we're going to go through this podcast through that lens.
Yeah, and I think even for our listeners, like, kind of imagine a candle, like, even on a very basic level, candles have layers, and that's kind of what these senses are. Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of going to jump into, the early days in terms of sound and like your sound and your kind of love for music. And then we're going to go into touch. We know that you kind of got into drums. And then from there, we're going to kind of transition over into taste and talk about cocktails, in which we'll play into the whole story. And then, of course, the main one, scents. Mm-hmm. Talk about these lovely candles that we're smelling right now. And then we're going to go into sight, which is where we'll talk kind of aesthetic and brand. And like Alex said, just all these things that you have really mastered and crafted. And we just can't wait to jump in.
I love it. Awesome. Let's go.
Let's kind of hear, we know you're from Minnesota.
Yep.
Tell us about like childhood and how you got into, music.
Yeah, grew up in the suburbs of Minneapolis and started out little when I was born in Champlin. By the time I finished, it was a big suburb, graduated with like 800 kids in my class, and every class after me was like bigger. Like it was like, which is all I knew. But then when I moved to Nashville, apparently like everybody in Nashville apparently graduated with like 12 people. I don't know, right? Maybe it's a Midwest versus Southern thing. Yeah. At least back in 2009 when I graduated high school. But yeah, like growing up, I always had this idea of, my parents are amazing and they always instilled in me kind of like a really great work ethic and, study really hard. I loved school. I'm like randomly nerdy in that way. Like I loved school. So I always did really, really well. And, but I was, it was kind of always this path of like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor one day. Oh, I'm going to do, it's like kind of like just, work really hard, study really hard, get good grades, go to a good school, get a good job. Like that was kind of like what I always, that was always the mindset as I was growing up, in a good way, not a bad way at all. But I spent all my time doing music stuff. I, from a super young age, I wanted to be a drummer. I don't remember a moment when that was like, when I decided that, but I just always, there's always music on growing up and I just always wanted to be a drummer. I think it was, the Lord was probably like, hey, you can't sing and so you can't hold a tune. So I'm going I'm going to give you a passion for like an atonal instrument, you know, like where it's because I like did piano and kind of stuff like that too growing up, but drums was always the one I really wanted to do. And so I started that as a young age, and it was just kind of like, that's what I did. I just loved playing drums. I have a twin brother. He played guitar.
Nice.
Hey.
So
I have a twin sister.
Nice.
Yep.
Awesome.
Twin energy here.
Twin energy.
Whoa.
Yep. So my brother and I are identical twins, and we I remember we got guitars one year. My mom got us guitars, and our neighbor across the street was the same age, and he had a guitar. So we would get together to jam, and it was like, well, nobody needs 3 guitar players. And but he had a drum set at his house. So I was like, well, I guess I'll play drums because, you know, I can't play this guitar thing. And I've always wanted to play drums. So that was kind of the start of it. Had a band all the way through high school, and then reached a point where there was this cool point where I was, you know, still I was doing all this music, but the goal was still like, oh, go to college, get a good job, do that thing. And my senior year of high school, I was doing a dual enrollment program. Shout out to the state of Minnesota for having an awesome dual enrollment program. Tennessee, come on, let's get one.
Yep. Call them out.
And I think Tennessee has one. The Minnesota one was amazing. I went to Bethel University full time my senior year. So I like literally never even set foot on my high school campus my senior year.
So cool.
And I had an incredible drum instructor, Steve Gould. Still, he's an awesome guy. And I was taking drum lessons with him at Bethel. And in one lesson one day, he was like, hey, if you just kind of like, I think it wasn't like a super thought out thing for him. He was just like, hey, if you ever wanted to like pursue drums as a career, I think you could do it. And it was like this crazy 5 minutes where I was like, at first I was like, but I had this whole plan. I was going to do this other thing. But he just told me that I could do drums. And after 5 minutes, I was like, cool, that's what I'm doing with my life. Like my whole trajectory changed.
Love that.
And that's how I ended up in Nashville. My mom grew up here. So I've always had family in Nashville. We would visit multiple times a year. And my grandmother, one time when we were visiting, was like, oh, you got to check out this school called Belmont. And I was like, never heard of it, but I'll go look at it, Grandma, while I'm there just to appease you.
Yep.
Not thinking I was going to like it at all. Right. And, went, toured it, and I was like, this is where I'm going to go to school, And so that's how I ended up in Nashville. Yeah, wow. With the goal of like, I'm going to go to college because, again, I'm a nerd and I love school. But I wanted to play drums. So I was like, Nashville's the perfect place to do that.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was the name of your band?
It depends on which one. I think the first one, the 3 guitar players where then I ended up becoming a drummer with our neighbor. It was called No Comment.
Oh.
In quotes, cool. Like literal quotes surrounding the name.
Nice.
Then my high school band was called Start of Something New.
Oh.
Also, our name was that before High School Musical
came
out.
Familiar.
Yes, but everybody thought it was apparent. I'd never even saw High School Musical, but apparently it's a song in High School Musical.
It
so
is.
Everybody thought we were like named ourselves after that song.
Right.
I don't know if we ever embraced that or not, but yep. So, and then there's a million other projects.
Were you guys like playing venues or like, was it just like garage?
Well, definitely. So, shout out to Danielle Soderholm, my mother. She one day we like called up my mom and she was at work or something, or maybe it was in the morning, and we were like, hey Mom, can we build a stage in the basement? And she was like, oh yeah, whatever, build a stage in the basement, right? And thinking that it would be this tiny little thing. But my neighbor across the street, we had recruited him, and he owned a construction company. So my mom didn't know this yet, but we had recruited him, and he was like, I'll build this thing for you.
Oh my gosh.
So he built this full-on wall-to-wall, like 10 feet deep, like black stage, and he put diamond plate across the front. Like it was like my mom, and he did it all in like a day, right? My mom came home and was like, what just happened? Our basement has a stage.
Like, what did I say yes to?
Yeah, it was an unfinished basement, and it's like we just would hang out there all the time.
Yeah.
So that's where we started. We weren't in the garage. It was Minnesota, so it got really cold in the garage in the winter, but we had a stage in our basement. But yeah, my high school band started something new. It was my brother and I, and then 2 of our buddies, Tony and Curtis, and we played a lot of shows just around Minneapolis. We did this whole battle of the bands thing. We were like the youngest band to make it to the finals of this like citywide
Nice.
battle of the
so
bands
fun.
thing. And then we broke up the band when John and I moved to Nashville. So we were like, see ya. So yeah, it was just a blast. And I knew that I always wanted like music to be a part of my life. And I was like, after, again, my instructor, Steve, was like, hey, you could pursue this.
Right.
I was like, well, shoot, I'm going to give that a shot and see what
Yeah.
happens. Yeah.
It's so amazing. I feel like people we talk to, they always have this pinnacle moment where someone speaks this life into them. It's almost like it was in you, but you just needed someone to call it out and just recognize
You almost need like
it.
permission to do
Yeah.
it, because, and I think this might be a generational thing, but I think a lot of people, especially people like our age, it's like, our parents, it was like, we were kind of raised with that kind of idea of like, you know, and this isn't everybody, and my parents are super supportive, but it's just kind of like that idea of like, you know, work hard, get a good job. And so there was definitely almost this idea of like I needed permission to pursue that, because it was like super high risk, like way out of left field, like really uncertain, high probability of failure. I needed somebody to be like, hey, if you want to try this, you could try this. You know, it's like, and then it was like, oh, great. Now that I know that's an option,
Right.
like I'm going to do it.
Well, and I think there's another layer of like, not only you have the option to do it, but like you can do it. Like he saw your talent, was like, I can see Steve really being successful in this. And even if you recognize that or didn't, like it was just there. And I'm sure
Totally.
even reflecting, you're like, wow, that's so cool. Like he called out, he gave me the, you know, permission, I guess you could say, but also gave me the like credibility and just kind of motivation.
Yeah, here
almost.
was somebody that, and I think this is super important for anybody pursuing anything. It's like, and I didn't set out for this to be the case, but here was a guy who was playing drums for a living. You know, he didn't just give lessons. He was touring. He was doing all this stuff. He was, you know, going on these world tours with people that I respected so much. And he was like, hey, you could do this. You know, so it was like, yeah, it was like it gave me that confidence of somebody who was doing it, saying I could do it. It was like, oh man. And it gave me a path to kind of follow, which was awesome.
How did you get over your fear to like jump into that? Because that's something like I struggle with, like
Totally.
staying on one vine that you have always been swinging on. How do you know when to reach out and grab the next one?
I think there was always something in me as you know, as I was, to your analogy, that as I was holding on to that vine of like, yep, go to college, get a good job, do that thing, be a doctor. Like all grown up, if you had asked me like, what do you want to do? I'd be like, I'm going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
So like, as I was holding on to that vine, there was always something that felt like not quite right about it. Not to say there's anything wrong with that path. That was just for me personally. There was something that just didn't feel right about it. And that moment when it was put in front of me of hey, you could do this music thing. You could pursue just playing drums as a career. There was something in me that just, something clicked and it felt so right and comfortable.
Yeah.
Now, there was definitely a lot of fear around it, but I think the thing, because it was so uncertain, I'm like, oh, I'm going into this, you know, I'm going to be a musician. Like, cool. I'm going to, you know, like there's a future in that. Like, oh man, big risk. But I think the thing that I rested easy in was like, I knew, like I had this thing in me that didn't, about like the doctor thing that didn't feel right. And I didn't have that with music. Like something felt so right about it. And I always knew that I would never regret anything by doing it.
Yeah.
Like I felt like the thing that got me over that fear was I knew no matter how successful or not successful I was in it, I would never like look back one day and be like, oh man, what if I had tried it? Because I knew that I was doing it. I was giving it a shot, whether I succeeded in it or not. Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah.
I know. So, okay, so we know you kind of started with music. You started at such a young age. Now you're in Nashville. Where did you just jump right into school, or did you start going on tour? What did that kind of look like?
Kind of both. Yeah.
Okay.
So started in 2009, moved here, which is so long ago now.
You've really seen the city change.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And also I was coming here all the time growing up too, right? So it's like, I always tell people when I was growing up, nothing changed about Nashville. It was always the same. And like in 2009 when I moved here, still nothing had changed. Like the growth had not started yet. It was like 2012, all of a sudden something happened and boom, it started growing like crazy. But yeah, I came to Nashville. I had toyed with the idea of actually studying music. Belmont's got a great music program. But again, there was something about that where I was like, I don't think, like, that's not what I wanted to go to school for per se, which was kind of a funny thing where I was like, I want to be a drummer professionally, but I didn't want to like go to school for that. And I've always had a passion for, business, which is like such a vague term, but so I was like, I'm going to study business. Belmont has a music business program, which is much more known now. But in 2009, when I was telling all my friends in the suburbs of Minneapolis that I was moving to Nashville to study music business, they're like, what does that mean? What is that? So I studied music business, and it was actually pretty cool because there was kind of two camps of musicians at Belmont. There was like the music business musicians, and then there were the like school of music musicians. And they were both incredible, but what I really loved about the camp that I ended up in was like we weren't playing music in school, so if we wanted to play music, we had to go play music. We had to like get each other together, make it happen, go out and play shows. So by the end of just over the course of my time at Belmont, we were playing, like I just was playing more and more, playing out more, and by the time I graduated in 2012, and by the time I finished school, I was playing pretty regularly. Like it just like slowly built throughout time there. And then like I was just in this crew of people that had been doing that, and we all started playing music full time once we graduated. And I was truly lucky enough to like move straight into just full time touring. I didn't have to like get another job while I did that, which was super freeing. And yeah, I just dove headfirst into that and did that for almost 5 years full time. Wow. Okay. Just touring. Yeah.
Who did you tour with?
I did, a ton of just singer-songwriters in Nashville, a lot of showcase stuff. I played with this incredible country artist named Claire Dunn. She's still out there rocking. We did a Bob Seger tour together.
Nice.
Cool.
Opened a Bob Seger tour, which was like the point when my dad was like, oh, this is awesome. Like you Bob Seger is like my dad's number one of all time.
Whoa, that's so cool.
So he was like, oh, you turned this music thing into a career. And I was like, yeah, but I'm going to quit this, Dad, and start making candles. So we did the Bob Seger tour. We did a bunch of like Luke Bryan stuff, Chris Stapleton stuff, which was super fun. We did the Florida Georgia line cruise, like on a cruise ship.
No
Wait,
way.
Full on, we were on a cruise
Hold
ship.
on. What do you mean? Like, what did that look like?
It's so there's this company called Sixth Man Cruises, and they do music festivals on cruises. I mean, John Mayer's done
That's
like it's
cool.
like
What?
Oh yeah, y'all check them out. It's hilarious.
No way.
And I had never been on a cruise before, but I've done a few of them. But it's hilarious. It's a music festival on a cruise. And the first one I did was the Florida Georgia line one.
Insane.
Nelly was there. Nelly, like it was just like, yeah.
Is it like a week long or just a few days?
It's like 5 days. Yeah, from Miami
way.
to like Nassau and back.
What?
You just wake up, play music.
Yeah, you play
food?
like once a day. Like
Yeah.
there's different stages like all across the boat.
No way.
Yeah.
That's so
It's
fun.
so fun. And then I played with an American Idol guy, Chris Allen. He won American Idol back in
Oh, I
2009.
know that name.
Yeah. He's a Nashville guy. Awesome dude. We played together a lot. Got to do some really, really cool things together. And then CCM guy Dan Bremnes. Those were the three I did.
Okay.
Probably the most regularly. But then there was, the touring schedule is really different in that it would be like, sometimes we'd be out for 3 months at a time. And sometimes we'd be out for like a week and you'd be off for 3 months. And, so it was just like the schedule was all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that 5 years that you're on the road, is there a piece of you that's missing? Like, was this everything you dreamed of when you took that big risk a couple of years earlier? Was this fulfilling you, or were you still looking for something to fill your soul up?
It was definitely both. It was definitely very fulfilling because I was like, again, it went back to the like, I will not have no regrets because I'm out here trying this thing.
Nice.
Like it's hard, it's risky, it's all, there were weeks and months where it was, I didn't know when the next gig was going to be, but I still loved doing it. Now there was also a piece of, and this is kind of like what Ranger Station was birthed out of, but there was this piece of like touring. If you ask any touring musician, and people now ask me, they're like, hey, do you miss playing music? And I also get the question of like, do you miss touring? And I'm like, those are two very different questions, because I never fell out of love with playing music. But you play music for 2 hours a day when you're on tour, on the days that you play, but you're gone 24 hours a day. So touring is very different. And when I first started it, I absolutely loved it. Like you just, you know, you're on a bus, or I should say, by the end of my 5 years, there were some times I was on a bus, but at the beginning of those 5 years, you're in a 15-passenger van.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you're lucky, you got a bench seat to yourself.
Yeah.
But usually not. But I just loved it. It was just like, you know, very little sleep. You're just like, you're driving through the night to the next show. It's just so fun. Like the memories I have of that time are so amazing. That being said, 5 years in, I was like, some of that novelty kind of wore off. And I was like, man, I know that I don't want to do that forever. I want music a part of my life, but I don't, like, I'm never home.
Right.
And I do think I have some really close friends that still do it today. And it's a special breed of person that, like, you know, they're like, that is their passion, and they make it work, you know, and they have families, and they're just like, they do that really, really well. Just for me personally, I kind of reached this place where I was like, man, I know I always want music a part of a part of my life somehow, but I know I don't want that to be touring forever. So about 5 years in, I made the choice of, like, again, just like a super scary choice of like, I don't know what's next, but I know that I need to step away from this to figure out what's next. So I made that conscious decision. I had a few more tours lined up, and I was like, I'm not going to book any more past that.
Okay.
And I'm going to fully expecting of like, I'm going to go become a bank analyst or like something. You know, I didn't even know what I was going to do, but it was like, I'm going to go work in a cubicle somewhere and really, you know, start a family. It's going to be really safe and all this stuff.
Right.
How old are you at this point? 26?
20. I would have been, 25.
Okay.
Yeah, 25, 26.
Okay, so you're 25 years old. You've kind of rounded out your sound and touch sense master skills.
Yep.
Now we kind of transition to a transitory period of your life where you kind of go to take this jump. And we take a quick stop, I think, at taste, where you start making cocktails in your downtime.
Yep. 100%.
How did that start going, and what was the inspiration there, and what was kind of the goal there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was totally born out of, well, two things. One, I was gone all the time. So when I was home, I wanted to see all my friends at one time. And when I was home, I was really bored. And I'm really bad at sitting still. I get bored really fast. I'm like, I need, like, just ask my wife, Jordan, like when we're at the beach, like she is like, she can sit on the beach and read a book all day long. I can sit there for about 5 minutes. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, all right, what are we doing next?
Right.
So when I wasn't on the road and I was at home, I was all like, I needed to be doing stuff, and I loved working with my hands, right? As a drummer, it's just like innate in me. Yeah. So I would have my roommate Nathan and I at the time, he was touring full time as well. And he's actually the one that like partially got me into it, because when we were both at home, we'd invite all of our friends over because we hadn't seen anybody, you know, for who knows how long. We'd invite everybody over. We'd make cocktails for everybody. And I always had candles burning because there was just something subconscious to me where I was like, man, if I want to create a really cool space for people, we need some good music on, and we need like a good candle burning, and we're going to make them like a really great cocktail. So I started getting really, really into that aspect of making cocktails. Started out learning just like very traditional cocktails, Manhattans, old fashions, all like gin martinis, all of that. And then started getting more into the weird, the more out there cocktails. And then even got to the place where I was like, oh, well, I love these flavors, and we just started like making up our own,
right?
You know, and so that's how I got into the cocktail thing, which is still something I'm very passionate about today. Cocktails and mocktails now.
Okay.
So yeah. What
was your favorite cocktail you made back then?
My buddy Nathan got me into them, but it's called Greenpoint.
Okay.
And it's a variation on a Manhattan. So Manhattan is rye whiskey and sweet vermouth. And it's the Greenpoint. So Greenpoint's is a part of Brooklyn. So, and the Greenpoint cocktail uses yellow chartreuse, which gives it there's two different types of chartreuse, a yellow chartreuse and a green chartreuse. So both of the yellow chartreuse does have a green hue to it, which is how the name Greenpoint came about.
Okay.
But you just take a Manhattan and you half the amount of sweet vermouth that you're using in the Manhattan and you replace it with yellow chartreuse.
Okay.
And it's just like yellow chartreuse is so cool. It's really hard to find right now, post pandemic still. Bars have it, but it's like hard to find at a liquor store. But it's like monks make it, and they're like sworn to secrecy on the recipe. It's this lemon limey kind of very herbal piney liqueur.
Okay.
But anyways,
Monks make it. That's crazy.
Yeah. But, and then, my wife and I were spending a ton of time in New York at the time, and we had a place we would always stay in Sunset Park, which is like not close to the city. It's like where the Costco is in Brooklyn. But we'd go for like weeks at a time. Right. So we felt like, oh, we're doing the New York thing. But as I was getting into just like making up my own cocktails, I made a variation on the Greenpoint that we called the Sunset Park, where you switch out the sweet vermouth for any type of like really dark herbal Amaro. And it's so tasty.
Dang.
So, yeah.
I love the way just so far how you really, like when you like something, you go all in. It seems like you really like to educate yourself and know about that subject or whatever.
It's a blessing
you're
and
learning.
a curse for sure. Yeah. I would leave no stone unturned.
Yeah.
And I feel the pressure of that until I've done it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're making cocktails, but you're burning candles. Pre-Ranger Station, what candles were you buying even?
Oh, it's
What
just
was your
anything
preference?
and everything.
Really?
I was just like, but I was always, I mean, anywhere from like really expensive, nice luxury candles to Walmart candles. I was just exploring, and some of them I loved and some of them I was like, this is not great.
Right.
Which ended up meaning me being like, oh, I'm going to figure out why.
Okay.
What makes, and also the candles that I really loved were like $75. And I'm like, why is this candle $75? I'm going to figure this thing out.
Exactly.
So yeah, I literally just one day Amazon Prime was like a new thing. This is 2015.
Okay.
So I just got an Amazon Prime and I'm like, oh, I wonder if you can get candle making equipment on Amazon Prime. And you could. So I literally just like bought some and like started making candles on my stovetop. Like it was like literally I would make like two candles a day. Max. But yeah, I was just like, I guess I'm just going to figure this thing out.
And you just, how often would you make candles? Was it just like an everyday thing?
Every day I was home.
Really?
Because I always say too, like if anybody had told me how hard it is to make a candle, like I never would have. I don't know. Knowing myself, I probably would have taken it as a challenge and been like, I got this. But ignorance was bliss, and I was just like, oh, it's wax and a wick and some scent. How hard could it be?
Right.
Well, it is very hard. It's like it's a full-on chemistry project, and chemistry was never like my this is like my subject that I love. I was more of a business or history guy, so it is super hard, and it took me a long time, a lot of like failures of just like the candle would not burn, or it'd burn way too hot, or it would just like, it wouldn't throw a scent, or, all of these things. So just through trial and error, I was, I was still touring this at this time too. Right. So I would be like test burning these candles on the bus, but I'd be
safe.
sneak doing it because like the bus drivers were like, that's a big no. There's a lot of flammable stuff on this bus, and we're moving down the highway at 80 miles an hour. Like, but I would do it anyways. And just like, kind of failure after failure was like, oh, I guess that's not how you do it. I guess that's not how you do it. And just eventually got to the point where I was like, oh, I think I've kind of got this, I've at least started to figure this out a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Were your friends at the time, when they would smell the candles, were you asking them for their thoughts, or were you just like, I like this scent, I'm going with it?
I think I was kind of secretive about it a little bit, because I think I was kind of like going back to that point of like, you needed somebody to like be like, hey, you should maybe do this.
Right.
Definitely like my roommates knew, like, but not a lot of people knew. It was kind of like when people would come over, like, because we were still having people over for cocktails, I'd be burning the candles.
Right.
And if anybody commented on it, I'd be like, oh yeah, I made that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I made there was a lot of things that I made that didn't smell good before I got anything that did actually smell good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen holes?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of Henry Winkler trying to make that little potion on the stove.
Oh, yes.
And then he finally comes up with something that eliminates the stink from the shoe. Mm-hmm. And his wife comes over and they're celebrating. It's like a big aha eureka moment.
Yeah.
Did you have one of those moments like Henry Winkler at the stove when you made your first candle and you were like, yes, that's it, and I can pursue this like full time?
I didn't have it for the like, oh, I can pursue this full time. Okay. But I did have this moment where my now wife Jordan, we had just started dating, and again, this 2015, we just started dating. I mean, just started dating, and we're at my house for one of these parties, right? We're like we're making cocktails for everybody, and Jordan and I are hanging out, and somebody came up to me and was like, "So Steve, how's making candles going?" And Jordan's like, "You make candles?"
Right.
Here I am trying to impress this girl. We'd known each other, like we met freshman year of college, but we didn't
Okay.
start dating until 6 years later.
Yeah.
So here I am trying to impress this girl, and like, her family is in Knoxville, Tennessee. Her dad's already like, "You're dating a drummer? Like, what are you doing?" And here I am like also making candles.
Yeah.
Like every dad's dream, right?
Yeah.
For their daughter.
That's so funny.
So Jordan's like, "Wait, you're making candles?" And I was like, "Yeah." So we're talking about it a little bit. And I had started making all the candles in cocktail glasses because literally I just had a lot of cocktail glasses because we were making cocktails for people when they would come over. So I'd pour all my candles in cocktail glasses and then burn them. And then once the candle was finished, I'd clean out the glass and it went back to being a cocktail glass. So that just became a thing where I was like, I'm just going to make all my candles in cocktail glasses, and like then people can reuse the glass once it's done. So you're not
so
just
cool.
throwing the glass away.
Genius.
Right. It really is genius, and it's crazy to think that how many candle brands exist today, but not one of them has any like repurpose use.
Yeah.
Like you really nailed something there.
And people were like, I was repurposing like when I bought other candles,
Right.
I was repurposing them for things. And there's a lot of people that do that just with like other candles, and I see like other brands now are like, "Oh, hey, you can also use it as a whiskey glass."
Yeah.
But yeah, there was this moment where, I'm telling like Jordan's just discovered that I make candles, and I'm like, "Yeah, they're all in whiskey glasses." And she was like, when I said that, she was like, "Oh, that's cool." Like it went from like this like not cool,
Right.
like what is it? Serenity by Jan, is that like The Office? Do you guys watch out? Right, so it's like she's got her own candles.
Great episode.
Right?
Probably
Yeah,
the best one.
so it went from that to like, oh, it's like I saw like she was like, "Oh, that's actually really cool." So that was probably like the biggest moment for me where it was like, oh, this girl thinks it's really cool and I think she's really cool, so maybe there's something here.
Right.
But yeah, as far as like the whole like confidence to like dive in head first, there wasn't really a moment
Okay.
that I decided to do that. I was still kind of touring, but I had decided to step away from that. I had this like over this course of time, like Jordan started really pushing me on the candle thing. She built a website on Squarespace and then launched the website and didn't tell me. Like, and I was like so upset about it. But like truly, Ranger Station would not be a company if she hadn't done that. She was like, "Cool, website's live," and I was like, we're not ready. We had one candle, the leather and pine candle.
No way.
That was it. So we had a full-on website with one product that you could buy. So that's like, and it had the name Ranger Station and all that. And so at this time I was like, had that going, but I was stepping away from touring, trying to figure out what was next, like really exploring a lot of, job options. Like, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And just I was still I couldn't spend all my time on that. I was still touring some, and like, it's just job hunting is obviously not like the most fun thing in the world. So again, just any of my downtime, I was like working on candles, and we had this website, so we were selling like 200 candles a year, like nothing. Wow. And I was still having to make candles sometimes, and it just was one of those things where I was just every day I was spending more and more time on that. Until it got to a point where I was like, just over time, it was like, oh, well, I guess this is what I do now. Because it's like, I don't have time to job hunt anymore because of the candle thing. So yeah, it kind of just slowly happened over time.
When you were making your candles in the early days, I guess my first question is, were you still using like the kits from Amazon, or like you had all your ingredients sourced already? And then secondly, Were you like, did you love candle making? Like, were you in a flow state when you were doing this and like time disappeared?
Totally.
Okay.
Yes. 100% flow state. Just like working with my hands, being creative, like doing, like, oh, I wonder how these scents go together.
Right.
Oh, no, those don't go together at all. Okay, toss that. Let's start over. How about these scents? And to this day, still when I'm perfuming stuff, like it's such a creative thing. Like yesterday, I wasn't planning on doing it, and it's like, but I like had this idea, so and then all of a sudden, most of my day is like spent on that thing, and it's just like you lose track of time, and like, so yeah, 100%. Like that was always kind of the case. But yeah, as far as like the materials I was using, I still had no idea what I was doing. I was like, I was buying everything I was getting from like these essentially craft websites. It's me and Serenity by Jan. It's like that, like truly. So, I wasn't, the materials I was working with weren't that great in the first place. Right. Yeah. And, but it's like, so I was working a lot with like already pre-mixed things, and then I was taking those and then mixing them myself to create like new things. Which looks very different now. Like now I've got like all the actual, like just pure raw materials. But yeah, I still had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but I was still pouring everything just by hand on the stovetop. We still pour everything by hand to this day, not on a stovetop anymore.
Right.
I was on the stove. Then as like things grew, quotes, air quotes, I moved into the garage.
Oh, okay.
And on like hot plates, I had like 2 hot plates. So I could make like every pitcher would make like 8 to 9 candles.
Okay.
And so I could make, 18 candles at a time.
Okay.
Max.
And we're talking like lemonade pitchers?
Like they're steel. Okay. They're aluminum. But yeah, it's just these aluminum things. You pour the wax in. You got to wait for it to get to the right temperature to add your oils to it. Because if it's too hot, you burn off all the oil, and if it's too cold, like it's like an oil and water situation where the fragrance doesn't like marry with the wax very well. So it's like a very slow process. But yeah, I was just doing it in the garage. Then I got a tiny little studio in Germantown.
Okay.
Tiny, like 10 by 10.
Oh my goodness.
And hired my first employee there. And I was still like, even once I had that studio, I still had like one last tour to do. Like I was still I was still transitioning out. And yeah, now we got like 2 big warehouse spaces, and we make 1,500 candles a day.
That's insane.
So very different than my little stovetop hot plate operation. Yeah.
So let's kind of jump in, because candles are they're really unique. We were really deep diving last night into just what a candle is and the power of scent. But walk us through kind of like the science. I want to hear the science behind a candle and just how it kind of works.
So with a vessel candle like we do, it's like you have the vessel itself. You can also do pillar candles too, which is a whole different thing, because it's like it's not in a container. So you're dealing with different waxes and stuff like that. We know how to do that. We just mostly do container candles. So you have your vessel, and then there's so many different types of waxes. There are, the most commonly used type of wax is a paraffin wax, which is a petroleum wax. And it gets a lot of bad. Paraffin wax gets a really bad rap because it's like it is it's a byproduct of like refining oil. It's a fossil fuel. It's not renewable, all of that, which there's a lot to be said for that, for sure. However, it's a really clean burning wax. Actually, there's a lot of misinformation out there about, like, we could do a whole nother podcast on like on misinformation.
That'll be part 2.
In the personal care and fragrance world. Anyways, the paraffin wax itself is like burns super clean, and it's one of those things where it's like it's a byproduct of refining oil, which we're not stopping doing that anytime soon. So it's like if it's not going into a candle, or like I mean, it's being used on every apple you eat. It's like this. It's as like a natural preservative, and it's all natural. But all to say, then there's a lot of other types of wax. We actually use a soy wax blend. So it's a high soy content from soybeans, fully renewable, burns very, very clean. But like 100% soy wax candles like don't burn super clean, and they're pretty unstable. You get a lot of sooting and a lot of inconsistencies and all that. So anyways, I could go way farther down into that, but there's a lot of types of waxes.
Okay.
And we of course think that our soy based blend is the best. It burns super well, really consistent, really clean, really safe. Everything Ranger Station does has to fall under being clean, safe, and sustainable. So then you got your wicks and your oils, which are the most important part of it.
Okay.
Once we have the actual fragrance oils, there's so many different types. And again, today we're blending oils from a lot of raw materials, like individual raw materials, which could come from all over the world. There is, like bergamot comes from Italy, and cedarwood comes from Texas and Virginia.
Interesting.
Like fir needle oil comes from Canada and Siberia. So there's like, it's kind of like wine a lot with all natural raw materials that there's just certain parts of the world where that stuff grows. Sandalwood grows in Australia. It does still grow in India, and that's where all sandalwood used to come from. But it was being over harvested in India, so it's protected now, which is great. But they also needed to find, like, sandalwood is very popular, so they introduced it into Australia, and they're able to like very sustainably grow and harvest sandalwood for its fragrance oil. But yeah, so it comes from all over the world, and that's with all naturals. We work a lot with all natural products. And again, a lot of misinformation out there about synthetic products when it comes to fragrance, but we do use safe synthetics. And the reason we do is that there's a lot of situations where again, everything we do has to be clean, safe, and sustainable. All natural doesn't mean any of those things. So there's a lot of all natural materials that are very not clean. They could be carcinogens. Just because it's all natural doesn't mean it's good for you. There's a lot of all naturals that used to come from animals that would like musk used to come from the musk deer. That's been like it's prohibited now. It's illegal to do that because it was depleting that population.
Right.
Anyways, all that to say, there's a lot of all really safe and clean synthetic materials that we work with as well. So we work with all of those, bring those together, and it's so similar to music. It's all the fragrance raw materials are called fragrance notes. This behind me with all my fragrance notes is called an organ because of all the notes. And you bring the notes together to create fragrance chords or accords, which is just literally like music. You're building a chord from notes, and then you use those chords to like build the actual fragrance into its like beautiful thing. And there's thousands and thousands of raw materials to work with. All those go into the wax, and then we do extensive wick testing. You can cut any of this out that you want to if it gets too boring.
No, it's so interesting. It really is.
But the wick's the most important part because when you introduce all those raw materials, that means every candle is going to burn differently because it has different raw materials in it. So obviously you want people to have a really great experience with your candle, and you want it to throw scent really well, and you also don't want it to explode. So it's like we do really extensive testing to make sure like that every candle that goes out of our door not only will perform super well, but it's going to be super, super safe for people.
Right.
So those are all the aspects of it. Candles are, and that's why I say, if I had known what goes into a candle before I started making it, I probably never would have tried.
Right.
So
I have so many questions. This is fascinating.
It really is.
Yeah, it's a chemistry project. It truly is.
Yeah.
Firstly, and I guess more logistically, when you are like sourcing your oils around the world, let's say fir in Canada, I think you said, are they like getting fir needles or trees and like distilling them down into an oil, so like just water?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's different ways. There's different extraction methods. There's distillation, which would give you an essential oil. So that's like the essential oil is a product of a certain extraction type, which is steam distillation. There's also, you can also do CO2 extraction, which gives you an absolute, that's for more delicate things like that. For steam distillation, you obviously have to heat the material a lot, and some materials can't withstand that. So CO2 extraction will give you an absolute, and they're always finding new ways to extract raw materials. Yeah. But yeah, they're literally taking those raw materials and like extracting them. And there's some really cool things like oud wood, O-U-D. Oud wood, the raw material, it's the most expensive raw material in fragrance. Really? It's $50,000 a kilo, which is like 2.2 pounds.
What?
I'll let you all smell it before you leave. It's
I feel like I need to pay for that scent.
But it's how they get it is it's from the agarwood tree. And the agarwood tree, they don't harvest agarwood trees for oud wood. They let them naturally die. And as the tree dies and starts decaying, it grows these veins. Like as the actual wood itself is decaying, it grows these veins. And those veins are oud. And they don't, like at first they don't really have any smell, and they have to age. And like kind of like it's like literally as this tree is dying, like it gets this really beautiful fragrance.
Whoa.
So it's just a really long process, which is why it's so expensive. But there's so many fascinating things in the fragrance world, especially with all naturals like that have like really cool stories of like how you actually get it.
Like I wonder with that tree, because you said as it's like decaying, the fragrance comes out. I wonder in its life what had to happen to that tree to either make it very strong and release a stronger fragrance, or like did it live an easy life so the fragrance maybe isn't as strong? You know what I mean? Like how,
totally.
Right.
Like us humans, you know what I mean?
And I'm always like, who was the first person that was like, I wonder if we could use that for a fragrance, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
God,
So
that's
stuff like that's
crazy.
like so fun.
Where does oud, like where do you source that from?
It grows in a few places. I can't remember right off the top of my head right now where it comes from, but there's a lot of raw materials are, I mean, it's very climate based, like where things can, it's just like if you're growing food, it's like you can't grow strawberries everywhere. Same type deal with like a lot of fragrance raw materials.
Gosh, I wish you guys could just smell the fragrance lab that we're sitting in right now recording this episode.
It smells incredible in here. Jade, how can our listeners get in touch with Steve so they can experience this amazing aroma?
Look, come to Nashville, go to 12 South, check out his store, or just go to rangerstation.co and you can purchase all his goods right there.
What fascinates me about you is that, like, going back to kind of building the song of your candle, adding the notes, the chords, you've done it with cocktails, mixing ingredients, making, like you said, new flavors when you knew kind of what materials you had or what different liquors you had.
Totally.
You did it with music, with your band, with your drumming. Is this just an innate God-given skill you have where you can just kind of see how to tinker things together? Is it, where did you get this from? I think this is like a superpower.
I think, well, thank you for saying that. I think my innate God-given skill is that is not that I'm naturally good at it, but that I just have kind of to what you said earlier. It's like I have this drive to just uncover everything, and just like learn through trial and error. Like truly, there's still to this day, I think it's super similar to songwriting, right? It's like every time you sit down to write a song, it's like you're probably not going to write a hit song. Most of the time when I sit down and like make something, it's probably never going to see the light of day. But it's just that process of learning, and but truly we always kind of joke about like, the Soderholm family. We have this tendency we're like, oh, we could totally figure out how to do that, right? And then we get to a certain point in the project where it's like we realize that we should never have done that, but we're too far down the road to stop, and our pride won't let us just call somebody to finish the project because we've already started. So I think there's a lot of that comes into it where I'm just like, I have these. It's super funny. Like when I think about doing something, like, oh, think about like making a candle. Like there wasn't anything that was ever like, oh, you probably can't do that. It was just like I'll figure it out. Right. I don't know how long it'll take me, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So I think it's a blessing and a curse for sure. Right. Because there are definitely things that I am not meant to do. So, and I still have that same mentality of like, I'll figure it out. And I kind of have to have that moment of like, especially as the company's grown, because like at first I was wearing all the hats, right? But especially as the company's grown, I've had to be like, you know what, that thing over there, I'm really not good at that. Like I need to release control of that to somebody else.
Right.
so that I can focus on like what I actually am good at. Yeah.
I think it's so interesting too how it seems like some of the people we've interviewed and a lot of other just creators, founders, you know, people in any craft, they just start by, you just started to create candles. It wasn't like, I'm going to build a candle company and that's the goal. The goal is just, I want to make a candle, and then the business is added, success and all these different things were added. And I don't know, it's so interesting the way that type of mindset can really alter and kind of explode if you then add all these little things and then it kind of flourishes. You know what I mean?
Totally. And I think it's like, it just, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to why we do what we do, you know? And it's funny. There's, especially as I was like kind of first starting, but still today too, you know, people would be like, oh, cool. So are you like, there was this, like the tech boom, like everybody was like starting these tech companies and selling them. Right. So people would be like, oh, cool. So are you like, you know, are you like growing this thing because you just want to grow this exponentially and sell to like a VC company and do all this stuff? And I'm like, first of all, if I wanted to make all the money in the world, candles is not the way I would have done it. Right. I'm like, okay, like, you know, it's like, if that was the goal, there's probably, you know, easier paths to get there. Right. Not easy, but easier paths than like candles. But no, like to your point, at the end of the day, I think it's, like I started this thing was born out of just like something where I was like, oh, I'm going to give this a shot. Oh, I really love and enjoy this. And also I think that comes through in our products and with anybody. And like, if you really care about what you're doing, I think it really comes out in what you do. And because if you don't enjoy it, then like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like we were, as we set our goals for the company every year, it's always like, you know, one of our values this year, we redo our mission statement, values, all that stuff every year. And one of our values this year is like, just like, is literally have fun. Cause I'm like, if we're not, and that doesn't mean there's not gonna be hard days,
right?
You know, things are gonna go wrong, right? And you got to fix things. And it's, you know, things will always go wrong. That's business. But at the end of the day, if we're not enjoying what we are doing as a whole, and we're not like showing up at work excited about what we're doing, then like, why are we doing it?
Yeah.
You know, and I even tell people at our company, you know, I'm just like, hey, if this isn't, you know, like we'll help you find like what you want to do. If this isn't it, then like, let's find what you actually want to do. Because if you're working at Ranger Station, we want this to be something that you have fun doing. Right. But yeah, I think that really comes out in people's work and is like a big key to longevity for, you know, because it is, building a business is hard. But, and I lose sight of it sometimes, but I am constantly reminded of like why I started. It just started as this, you know, oh, I just wanted to create a cool space for people when they came over to my house.
Right.
At the core of what we do, like that hasn't changed. You know, we're just doing that for other people now as well. Yeah.
Can you kind of talk us through, you know, we're in your fragrance house in Nashville, you're in your lab, we can call it. Tell us about just like the business, the scale, where are you in different locations? What does that kind of look like?
So this perfume studio, my perfume lab is in the back of our first retail store. Okay. Owned retail store here in Nashville. And we opened this 6 months ago. Okay. And have just absolutely loved it. I mean, it's like we were up until now, like we had never had like our own retail spot. We did a pop-up last year, which gave us a long-term pop-up that gave us the confidence to like be like, yeah, let's open up our own store. This location totally fell into our laps, and which we're so incredibly blessed by. We were like, this 12 South neighborhood is like, Jordan and I both went to Belmont. Like it's just, we've both like, Jordan lived in this neighborhood for a long time. So this has been so fun. We definitely would love to open more stores. And so we're loving that. And also in fragrance, it's cool to have like this in-person thing. But we've been doing wholesale business to retailers and online business for a long time. We're almost 9 years in. Okay. Wow. 2015 was the first year. But again, that was like in my garage, like 2015, you know? So it's like, we've come a long way since then. But yeah, we have a really big wholesale business to retailers across the US. And I mean, fragrance is just it's best experienced in person because, and that's one of my favorite things about it is like, as cheesy as it sounds, fragrance will always be analog. There's literally no way to digitize it. Right. You can't. So, like that's been really cool to just watch that wholesale presence grow at retailers. And, like once they believe in us, they push it to their customers, and it just gets the name out there more and more, which is so fun. And then we do a lot of online business too. You know, we want to we want to make everything available to everybody, and so our website does that. And again, it just started out with Jordan publishing a website on Squarespace forever ago with just one candle. But that's grown a lot too. So those are our biggest parts of our business for sure.
And you have how many candle scents now?
Oh man, we've got probably, it's always fluctuating because like some are core, like just around forever. Some are seasonal. We do, and outside of candles, we do fine fragrance, diffusers, personal care goods. And some are exclusive to those different things too. But all in all, we probably have about 35 to 40 like active, fragrances, available right now. Like in a candle, I think we probably have like 15 or 16 like candle options, but that's just changing throughout the year. And we're always developing new stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
If you had to describe your portfolio of scents in the terms of music, what kind of music industry would you comp it to? Rock, pop, country?
I would say, folk music, country music for sure. Kind of classic folk country music. Like it's and just like underproduced, which could be anything truly, but it's like, and that's probably a better way to put it, because like folk and country kind of fall into that really well. But any type of music that's, and I love pop music that's overproduced. Like I love it, but it's like, as we're talking about our brand and like the music that I think really goes well with it, it's this like back to our roots, simple, stripped down, again, underproduced thing. And that's the way we approach our fragrances too. When I'm developing fragrances, like I want it to be, we don't want it to be this super complex, crazy, like super powdery, headachy perfume that we're making, like we want to do something that is different. We want to do something that's more stripped back, that's more, and that doesn't mean not, stripped back doesn't mean not like powerful, like all of our candles are going to like fill your house really well. All of our perfumes are going to like people are going to be able to smell them on you. But yeah, I think that would be the biggest thing, is that underproduced, very stripped back. And then also fragrances are all broken down into top, middle, and bass notes, which is super similar to music, and like treble, middle, and bass. All of our fragrances are very bass note heavy, and we have top, middle, and bass notes in most of what we do. Top notes are going to be your like light florals, very citrus forward, very small molecules. They're really volatile. They don't last very long. Middle notes are like lighter woods, heavier florals, heavy citrus notes, very grassy green notes. And then base notes are the ones that like last a really long time, and they're your heavy woods, your ambers, your sandalwoods, your smoky notes, very heavy green grassy hay notes. I love playing. I mean, I was a drummer. We were the rhythm section. We were the bass notes. Like it was like so. Most of our fragrances are that too, which is cool. Yeah.
And so now you're also working with artists to kind of blend different candles with their music style.
100%.
You also do the same thing. I think with every candle comes a cocktail recipe.
Yeah.
So blending in multiple different directions into one like kind of web of scents.
Totally.
But anyway, so back to the artists. How did that start happening? How did you get your first, artist to inspire a candle?
Man, so many of the things that we do, including we're calling it our features program now. When we first started doing it, it had no name, but our partnerships with artists, with so many things that we do now, like an opportunity would come our way and we'd be like, well, we've never done that before, but like, let's try it. Like that door open, let's walk through it and see what happens, and it doesn't always work out, but we had, we just started getting kind of requests for that, and fragrance is storytelling. That's all it is. At the end of the day, we're trying to tell a story. We're creating an experience for people. And having come from the music world, like I had a lot of connections just in, like a lot of my relationships were just in that world. And music is storytelling, right? So when we're creating a fragrance, like for a candle, it's like we're trying to create an experience, a story around, you know, what do we want you to feel when you are burning this candle at your home or wherever it is. With the artist collaboration thing, it's been a cool way to flex another muscle where it's like they come in with, they're already telling a really cool story.
Right.
Whether that be just as a whole, as the artist, or maybe it's like, oh, they're about to come out with an album. What story is that album telling? What feeling is that evoking? And it's cool to come alongside that and be like, okay, this story is being told through music. Like, how do we tell that same story and augment that story even more into a fragrance? And it's like, I'm always putting myself in like, okay, this album comes out. I'm sitting down at my house. You know, I'm going to put that album on. I want to burn a candle that like fits really well with that. I want to be drinking a cocktail that just like wraps up with everything. You know, it's like I want the full sensory experience. And every time we do a music collaboration, like that's what I want. I want people to be like music. Like, yes, we have digital forms of music, but still it's like you can only experience it in person, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you're actively listening, and it's cool to do fragrances around that, where somebody can be sitting listening to an album and like not just their auditory sense of like their olfactory system with fragrances, like adding to that experience in a really cool way. Yeah.
Scent is so powerful. Like we were deep diving into it yesterday because you just don't realize, like you said, the memories and things attached. Like I can sit right now and remember what like my second grade teacher like smelled like. You know, like it's crazy. Do you have a memory that sticks out to you of a scent that just you smell it and it's like, wow, like I can remember that so vividly? I
have a lot for sure. One of them though, so the first candle that we ever made that was on that website that Jordan published without asking me is our leather and pine candle. And we still have it to this day. It's still one of our top sellers. It's one of those things where I'm like, those scents should never have like really worked well together. But, you know, I still don't really know what I'm doing, but I definitely didn't know what I was doing then. So I was like, oh, cool. We'll just see if these things worked well together. And it totally did. But I was trying to recreate this experience of growing up in Minnesota. My grandparents live in Grand Marais, Minnesota, which is on Lake Superior, 30 miles from the Canadian border, up in it's called the Boundary Waters. It's just like a ton of national forest. It's just the most beautiful place. I would go up there multiple times a year, and we were always out. It's like we always joke, like my grandfather is still cannot sit still. You know, and that's where I get it from. Yeah. Where it's just he's, you know, we go up there. The last time we were up there, and we're just like I don't like sleep in, you know, I get up pretty early, you know, and we get up, you know, I'm getting coffee. I'm like, where's grandpa? And he's like, oh, he's out, you know, mowing so-and-so's lawn. Like, you know, he's just go. Always going. He's 90 and just cruising.
Tank.
What a beast.
Yes. So yeah, he's amazing. So, but we were always doing stuff while we were up there. And it was like, it's all coniferous pine forest. And we were always working with our hands, right? So we had these leather boots, leather gloves, like leather everything, you know, as we're like doing this work. So like that was a memory that I always had of like being out in the woods in these like very piney, you know, coniferous woods. So I was getting all those pine fragrances with like, working alongside my grandfather, you know, these leather gloves and stuff. So that always takes me back. But yeah, fragrance is so powerful. And it's like, it truly operates different than any of our other senses. All of our senses are very important for sure. But our sense of smell, like our olfactory system, is literally wired different than all of our other senses. And it has to go through, like when we smell something, it's the only one of our senses that is directly tied to like our amygdala and hippocampus, which is like what makes us feel.
I haven't heard those terms
and
in a
memories,
long time.
Right? Yeah, told you.
Nerd.
I'm nerd. Yeah, totally. So it's like, it's truly just the way our brain processes fragrance is it makes us feel. And because of that, and because of our memory centers, it's like, that's why when you smell something, you can remember it. It's super nostalgic. And it's literally just how our brain processes that. And our brain doesn't have to work very hard to do that. All of our other senses, it has to like work much harder to like create a memory from it. And any experience you have that has a fragrance aspect to it, like you will literally remember that memory better because there was a fragrance aspect, because of how your brain like imprints that the memory more because of the fragrance that's tied to it. So I didn't know any of that when I started doing candles.
It's cool.
I think subconsciously I did because I was like, I want people to come over and I'm always burning a candle because I want to create this great experience. But truly, like, it is, when you walk into a space, whether you're conscious of it or not, like, how it smells is the first thing your brain is registering. Before you see anything, hear anything, touch anything, like how it smells in that space is setting the tone for like the rest of your experience there. So it's like when you go over to somebody's house or somebody comes over to your house, how it smells sets the tone for the rest of the experience. It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
When you set out to make a new scent, are you trying to match your own memory? Like, oh, I remember my grandpa and how he smelled. Are you trying to create your own memory in a smell? Or are you trying to create a smell that could evoke memories for other people? If that makes sense.
Both. It depends on the project, truly. Because sometimes I'm like, man, I have this really amazing memory, like the leather and pine candle, like being in northern Minnesota. But other times it becomes more of like what story are we trying to tell? What story do I want? What story do I want the people buying our candles and using them to like feel? Is it something where it's like, do I want to build something where somebody can be burning it while they're working and I want them to feel super creative and like, so I'm going to bring in notes that are like fragrance notes are like literally proven. Some are proven to like boost creativity. Some are proven to be more relaxing. And, sometimes it could be as simple as that. Other times, again, it's other people's stories. Other times it's just an emotion, that I'm trying to evoke. And sometimes it's literally an actual physical place that I'm trying to be like, oh, like we want a fragrance that smells like this physical place in the world, like let's use raw materials from that actual place. So it comes from different places.
Is there an experience that you've had that you haven't been able to craft into a candle yet? That you're like, I just can't nail this?
That's a really good question. Being on stage? I don't know. I'm trying to like go back in my memories and see if there is something, but I think, well, I will say this, there's definitely memories I have of fragrance that I don't want to create a fragrance of because it's like, because like our fragrance memories aren't always like, the memories are good. Don't get me wrong, the memories are good, but I'm like, especially when it comes to perfume and like stuff like that, there's like, we all remember our grandma's super powdery rose perfume, and it's like, I don't really want that anymore. When I smell it, I'm like taken back. But no, I think that I think I'm always looking for new ways to express myself through fragrance. But I wouldn't say that there's any memory that I've been like, man, if I wonder if I could like turn that into to a fragrance. Now that you said it though, like tomorrow or like in the middle of the night tonight, I'm going to wake up and be like, darn it. That's it. That's the one I need to do. So I'll let you know once that happens.
Good challenge.
Yeah.
It's going to be the smell of the basement that you had your stage on.
Totally. Yes. Yeah. The basement at my house growing up.
DIY stage.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. So.
All right. So we've gone through 4 senses now.
Yes,
we have one last sense. We have the sense of sight. And I think this works well to kind of like go out on because light, vision, where are you going in the future? Also the brand that you've built, the aesthetic, the feel.
I mean, even just the logo is so cool. Like talk us through that and even the name.
So the name Ranger Station came from when I was a senior at Belmont, I moved into a ranger station in Green Hills. Okay. Literally, so 12 South, like right here, this road that our store is on, where we're sitting at, turns into Granny White. Okay. Down by Lipscomb University. Right off of that it's still there. There's an old ranger station. It used to be like a natural park area. If you're listening and you live in Nashville and you've been to Radnor, it's like Radnor. Like it used to be like Radnor. And this was the ranger station for it, built in the 1800s at some point, right?
Oh.
So the thing is falling apart. Like it has all the character in the world, aka none of the windows closed. Like it's just like, it's been there forever. And so I lived there for like 3 years. My brother and I and like a lot of good friends like lived there, but it was a cool space it was one of those houses where we'd come home and like people would just be there. Like they didn't live there. And there's a fire pit in the back with like a creek literally like ran through the property, and it's like it's tucked back in the trees, so you literally feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. And I just have a ton of amazing memories from that place. And we of course called it the Ranger Station. So that name, even after I moved out, that name always really stuck with me, of like the Ranger Station. It was memories of this warm place where like people were always gathering and coming together and creating cool experiences. So then when I was starting candles and I was like, well, why am I making candles? It's like, well, to bring people together. Like my fondest memories of that were at this Ranger Station. So the name just fit. And then the hat is just a Ranger hat. I was like, literally, I still have the notebook somewhere. It might be here or at our office, but like literally I still have the notebook where I like sketched out the like actual logo.
Whoa.
And I was like, what if we just put this logo on the glass? Like it's just a Ranger hat, But yeah, so that's where the name comes from. And then the aesthetic of it has it's grown over time for sure. And I, please hear me, can take very little credit for how everything looks. We have my wife and and our amazing team and designers and all of that have done such a good job of making Ranger Station look amazing. I'm much more on the scent side of things. I can design stuff, but it's like I need, I'll design like 20 things and then show it to like Jordan. She's like, yeah, this one's good. The other 19 are like, yeah, good. Like not good ideas, but no, we're going to go this way. But yeah, the aesthetic of it, we've really leaned into being like Ranger Station as like an American fragrance house, American heritage fragrance house, where fragrance traditionally is a very European art form, high art, expensive, and there's like tons of respect for that. Like it's been around forever in Europe, but if you grow up in Europe, like being a perfumer is something where you're like, oh, that's something that's something you've heard of. Growing up in the US,
right?
No, you don't hear about like a career path as a perfumer.
So
no,
Yeah.
There's more astronauts in the world than there are perfumers. Like it's still a very niche thing to do. But yeah, there's not a lot of people doing fragrance in the US. Even a lot of the fragrance houses that have, major offices in the US are still like European companies. And again, tons of massive respect for what they do, but we wanted to lean into this very American, like America has this, like American craftsmanship. Like when you say American craftsmanship, that means something
For sure.
and I think in a lot of ways we've lost that and are starting to lose a lot of like what it means to be like American crafted. And we really want to lean into that of like, there is a ton of value in something being American made and American crafted. Doesn't mean it's the only way to do it, but there's a lot there. So we wanted to, with the brand, lean into like this classic American aesthetic, which is where like a lot of the Western themes come in, like this very, Ranger, like park ranger hat, like thing happening, a lot of horses, like all of that kind of stuff. And again, I'm a huge nerd. I'm literally reading like the Theodore Roosevelt like biographies right now. And I'm just like, that's like what, that's what I think of. He's literally just out. He goes out west hunting all the time. So yeah, just really leaning into that kind of traditional sense of American craftsmanship really brings a lot of story into how we visually present things. Yeah.
Okay, and then talk us through, if you're on the Ranger Station website, there's a really cool aspect where you can click Shop 3D.
Oh yeah.
What is that, and what are you doing there?
Yeah. So shameless self promotion here. My buddies Matt and Barn and I have co-founded this company called Abode.
Okay.
And it's a way, we're almost in beta for it. So If y'all go to abode.store and sign up for our waiting list, you will hear about it soon. But yeah, it's just cool. We're trying to do something. The idea came out of my buddies Barn and Matt. They built this 3D tool as a social platform. And I called up Barn one day and I was like, hey, what if we did, like, I feel like commerce needs this, because there's this weird thing happening, especially post-pandemic, where people are craving in-person experiences, right? They love, like, we see it when we opened our store. People love going to a store and shopping, and they want in-person experiences and stories to tell. But you can't give that to everybody at once, right? And the internet is a pretty cold place. It's not, our thing is like, we want to make the internet a little bit more human. We're not trying to replace in-person experiences. We're like, please come to Nashville and come to our store. Like, that's what we really want. But we also want an aspect of like, hey, if you can't do that, we want you to still get a little piece of what that in-store experience is like. So yeah, we built this 3D version of Ranger Station that you can literally walk through, and you can click through to the back room to where we're sitting right now.
It's
and
so cool.
It's always switching out of like the things you can shop on there. But yeah, I think there's an aspect of like websites are great. Yep. And you can really communicate a brand, really, really well through a website. And I think there's like so much space to do a little bit more, where it's like when you click on Shop 3D on our site, it's like all of a sudden you're in our store, so you immediately feel like what Ranger Station is supposed to feel like. So whereas like you can get that from just a normal website through imagery and like great copy and all of that, but it takes you a little bit longer, Yeah. So yeah, super excited about that. It's still something that it's still super new. But like lots of great feedback already. So definitely hit us up if you want to, anybody listening, if you want to, explore what that looks like. But yeah, we wanted to make it more of like some sort of in between being in store and just shopping online. Right. So it can get so complicated to like click shop and then look at collections and like, especially if you're like some websites, you're just like, wow, they have like 5,000 things, it's like hard to get through, but if you can visually do that, it makes it really cool.
Sweet. I got one more question before we get to our to-go questions.
Let's do it.
So you're in the storytelling business. It's what you do. When it's all said and done over the next 5-10 years, what story do you want to see unfold with Ranger Station and your company and your personal life and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me, I think it kind of goes back to that question of like when, people are like, oh man, are you just like trying to grow something like exponentially? And I'm like, yes, I'm trying to grow something, but it's like, I want to do it. Like I want to grow something for the sake of growing it. I want to, I want to grow this thing because I love doing it. And I want the people that work at Ranger Station to love doing it. So 5-10 years down the road, I want to be doing the same thing, just bigger. Nice. I still want to be spending time in my fragrance studio here, like making, creating perfumes, putting things together and being like, well, that's terrible. Let's toss that out. Let's start over. Oh, cool. We found something good. I want to be a company that like sustainable growth is like really important to us. So I always want to be doing that. And yeah, I want the story, my personal story and the story of Ranger Station just to be, another one of our values, which makes it feel super corporate, and we are not, but it's just like, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And I hope that's my personal story for sure, and the story of Ranger Station, where it's just like, if we're going to do it, if we're going to half-ass it, there's no reason to do it. Right. Like if we're going to do something, let's do it all the way, which means we can't do everything, but the stuff that we do really, really well. And that's, that causes a lot of headaches sometimes, but at the end of the day, it always makes us look back and be like, oh man, we're super proud of what we did. Or again, going back to, what made me feeling confident to like leave Minnesota and move to Nashville to play drums was like, I knew that no matter how successful I was, or if I was successful at all in it, like just trying was a success in itself, and that I would never look back and be like, man, what if, you know, when we run up, even in Ranger Station, when we run up against things that are like, should we do this? I'm like, well, if we're ever going to get to a point where it's like, we're going to regret not trying, then we just need to try it. And it doesn't always work, you know, but every once in a while it does. And I think that's the biggest thing for me personally, that I never want to look back, you know, in 10 years, I want to look back and be like, we tried everything we wanted to try and we don't have any regrets. Some things worked and some things didn't, you know, but we made an impact.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So we like to always wrap up with some quick little to-go questions.
Love it.
You don't have to think too hard into it. So you do some collaborations, features. If you could collaborate with any band or artist, alive or dead, who would it be, and what do you think that scent would be?
Oh man, John Mayer.
Oh my gosh.
I just think it's like, when I think about that American heritage, just quality, you know, it's like, he just always comes to mind, where it's just like, and I'm trying to think of the album title. Like kind of, you know, the like the Born and Raised album title, you know, I just get that visual,
Queen
you
of
know,
California.
yeah. And just like, you know, and you know, him living in Montana, like all this stuff. It would smell like Montana.
Yeah.
You know, it would just smell like the American West.
For sure.
But yeah, I think he definitely embodies that kind of, that very underproduced, very real, you know, a lot of real instruments like on his albums. I think he embodies that well.
Well, I would sell you out of that candle, so you have a customer.
Yeah,
at least
John,
one.
hit us up.
Yep, come on, he'll listen.
Yeah.
If there's one smell, what is one smell that you wish you could smell that you can't?
Oh, that's great. That's good. So every human does not smell the same. Like all of us smell a little bit differently, and we all have things that we can't smell. There's a few actually, and especially as you get down to like the actual just raw scent notes all by themselves, it's there's a couple musk notes, like those really heavy base molecules. They're just so big and not volatile that it's hard for some people to smell, and I'm one of them. And my identical twin brother John also can't smell them.
Way.
Like it's funny how that happens.
Whoa.
But there's a couple of those where I'm like, man, it's interesting though, because once you put it in solution with something, I can tell what, like, character wise, how it changes the other things. Like where I can't smell that one thing by itself, when I do add it to maybe some other creation I have, I can tell how that creation changes, even if I can't smell that note by itself. But I think it's cool. I think it makes every perfumer different. I think it's why fragrance is subjective. It's just like there's certain scent notes that I am much more inclined to use because I can smell them really well. And others that I can't really smell that well, I'm probably not going to use as much. But that's different for a different perfumer because we all smell a little bit differently. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Interesting.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So, this conversation has been an experience. We're here on the CEO lunch break, Alex, myself. If you can make a fragrance of the CEO lunch break, what do you think it would be?
Oh, man. Not like lunch, because you always want to, okay, so, if you guys are ever burning candles, always keep them away from the kitchen.
Yep.
Because food and fragrance don't always mend well together. Like, always have it in the living room, not in the dining room type thing. But man, if it had, here's what I would say. I mean, y'all are spending time with CEOs. I would do a fragrance that's probably pretty, still, we do everything very base note heavy. So lots of base notes, sandalwood, cedarwoods, like a sharp cedarwood, but something that has a very bright freshness to it. Maybe like, something with a lot of, not sweet citrus, but dry citrus in it, because that can be very invigorating and creative and energy boosting. And I view like this has been an experience, and I'm like, I feel filled up. I feel super energized from having this conversation. So yeah, if I were to put that into a fragrance, it would probably be something along that line where it's like something that is very creative and fearless, you know, because people that are, I'm sure so many people that you're talking to, I don't think any CEO is fearless. I think they've just learned how to conquer fear, or not even conquer fear, just live with it,
Right.
you know, because it's always there.
Right.
But yeah, I think something very bright, very citrus forward, dry citrus, not sweet citrus, that like just, you know, kind of like that, like, I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sick.
Love that.
That would smell good.
I know.
Let's do it.
Okay, one of my favorite smells in the world is after a thunderstorm. When
Yep.
it's all wet. So firstly, quiz
Petrichor.
time. Beat me to it.
Yep.
Petrichor.
Yep.
Second question is, do you have the ability to somehow harness that as a smell?
It's been tried quite a bit. Some people have done it. You can do something called headspace analysis, which is you literally go to, you know, like, oh, well, you want to capture what petrichor is. Like you can do a headspace analysis of like, you literally capture air from that space and analyze it to be like, what's in this? So, and there's nothing like there's no like quote unquote all natural like petrichor. But a few people have figured out ways to kind of recreate what that is, because it's a lot of things happening at once, right? It's this very dewy, wet, you know, thing. Like water doesn't smell like anything though. So you're like, okay, what is petrichor? Yeah.
We were arguing about that last night.
Yeah. Or if your water does smell like something, like where are you getting your water? Right. So,
point proven.
But water does things to, like, you know, if it's a very wet grass earthy thing, like what that water is like, you know, moistening that and like release, you know, what is that releasing? So it's a super cool phenomenon where it's like it's all these things coming together to create this very petrichor, it's like hard to put your nose up like on what that even is. But yeah, it's been cool. It's like people have been trying to recreate what that is. And there's a couple that have gotten pretty close. Cool. But I think there's also something to be said for like, there is things like that where it's like, I have a love for fragrances like that where you're like, you can't even fully recreate that, you know? There's definitely things in the natural world where it's like, oh yeah, let's distill that down and boom, like, yeah, we can recreate that actual fragrance or just distill that bergamot into like a bergamot fragrance. But there are also things like that where it's like, hey, if you want that true feeling of petrichor, you're just going to have to go outside after a storm, you know? And I think that's really cool. Like those elusive things like that are really great.
It's just a gift.
Totally.
Just a gift.
Yeah.
So thinking about candles, it's so crazy to me because I'm like, back then, you know, hundreds, thousands of years ago, not even that long ago, candles were like an essential. You know, they were like water. Like you needed them for literally like living in light.
Totally.
And now they're solely for just an experience or for a scent. Do you think there's something today that, you know, in the future you see being more of just a luxury rather than a essential need?
Man. Yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, scented candles are honestly very new. Because like you said, like they were just used for light for the longest time.
Right.
And then, somebody one day, I think it's less than 100 years old if like it's scented candles. Like it's still a super new thing. So, man, something that like we have that's really practical now that would end up being, I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff that's kind of like on the spectrum of that where it's like I think scented candles are a cool thing where it's like we've taken something that was very practical and turned it into an art and like an experience, you know, and, you know, it was like people needed to be burning candles, and now we don't need to be burning candles for light, but we still like burning them for light, like on a dinner table. And it's like, oh, we can turn this thing where it's like, we can turn it into an art form. So I think of our other senses. I think of like food, you know, it's like food's a necessity,
right? Like
we have to eat, right? Well, like there's a difference between like food, like sometimes you just have meals like just because you're like, I just need to eat, you know, and it's like, I need sustenance, right? But then there's like other times where you go, like food becomes an experience. And I love that when like things like that are something that are just like a necessary part of life, but like people are turning them into big experiences.
Yeah.
Like if we have to do it, let's do it really well and let's turn it into this really cool experience that like we're going to remember, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean every meal has to be that, but yeah, I think things like that. But I can't necessarily think of anything right now that's like, that I think is just practical right now that will only be an art form in the future. I think candles are kind of scented candles like that are pretty unique for sure.
They really are.
Yeah.
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 All right. We have a time machine right here in this room.
Okay.
We can get in it and go back to the early 1900s.
Yep.
And you can give Teddy Roosevelt one of your candles. And if he likes it enough,
Yep.
he'll join your rock band.
Oh, let's go.
Which one are you giving him?
Knowing a lot about him, not knowing him personally, obviously. Man, I would give him the leather and pine candle.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's, you know, he was such an outdoorsman. I mean, he was just like, literally one of the stories I just read is like, they were out hunting and he like jumped off of his horse, like into this pack of dogs and like kicked the dogs away and killed this cougar with his pocket knife. I'm just like, this is like a man's man out there that just lived like, and his whole thing is like a strenuous life is a life well lived, you know? So something like, I think that leather and pine is just like evocative of that being out kind of in the elements, which I think is, I can't speak for him, but I think that's where he probably felt the most comfortable was, you know, not behind a desk, but, you know, out on horseback somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So let's get back in the time machine and go forward. Do you think AI will ever be able to have the sense of smell?
I don't think it'll ever be able to have a sense of smell. I think I'm one of those people that I'm like, let's learn how to harness this thing and just see, you know, because it's like there's going to need to be a human element to it, right? I think, you know, AI could have, technically we could probably feed a bunch of information to AI and be like, hey, spit out a fragrance formula, but then we have to put that together and a human has to smell it to be like, is it any good?
Yeah.
And feed that information back to AI. So I don't know.
No.
I think it could help. You know, I think it could, you know, similar to music where I'm like, it could create music, but then you've kind of lost some of the human
magic.
aspect of it. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see.
It's a good question. It's a
Yeah.
very good question.
Yeah.
All right. So every CEO we have on our podcast, we ask them the same question. We're building a CEO bookshelf.
Okay.
And you get to add one book to that bookshelf.
Yep.
We're going to put it on our website, add it to the CEO bookshelf. Which
Yep.
book are you choosing and why?
Unreasonable Hospitality.
Mogadera.
Yes.
Love it.
It is. Has somebody already said that one?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, I'll give you another one too after this one. Then. But that book, again, our values, one of our values this year, unreasonable hospitality. I know he's in the hospitality world, but you can apply that to everything. Just create good experiences for people, and that is good business. The other one would be the 1 Minute Manager. You can read it in 15 minutes, and I read it often. You just keep going back to it because it's such a key to growth. It just teaches you how to like delegate well, not abdicate any authority. Like it's like how to like get things done through other people in a really good way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
And then we are on the CEO lunch break. If you could have lunch with one CEO, who would it be and why?
Oh, man. One CEO. I think it's always changing. I think right now, I would have to say Jeff Bezos just because it's a cheesy answer. I know. But I'm like, literally, I just go back to like, I feel like there's that image of him that's always circulating of him in his office like forever ago. And it's just this tiny office that's got no room in it. It's super cluttered. And I'm just like, I just want to like know, what were you thinking then? You know, because I'm like, you weren't thinking you'd be where you're at right now. Like take me back into Jeff's life then. I'd want to know more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So,
incredible. We
Yeah.
love hearing these founder stories, and we're so thankful that you sat down with us, took the time to dive in to all the different sense of who Steve is, of who Ranger Station is, and I hope that our listeners catch the fragrance of this episode.
Very nice.
There you go.
Very
I
nicely
like it.
played.
I like what you did there.
But
Well, Thanks again, Steve. We really
Thank you
appreciate it.
guys.
was
Thanks
so
Thank you
for taking
so
our lunch
much.
break with us.
Thanks for doing it.